Hi, I'm Andrew Sears, and I'm the president of City Vision University. And Chris Headland and I are going to be doing a recording of a presentation on developing effective aftercare programs. This is a presentation that we did at the Citygate conference in 2025, but we're recording on Zoom so that we could make it available for everyone in high quality. Um, so, just an outline. I'm going to start talking about City Vision's research on aftercare programs. And then most of this is going to be focused on Hope Gospel Mission's aftercare program as a best practice model. And then I'm going to conclude with talking about Wounded Healers as an aftercare partnership program model. So City Vision has worked with a lot of different rescue missions. So each year we have over 600 partner meetings with individual organizations. We've had over 500 students, and we have advisory councils, and we have collect documents from toolkits. And what we do with that is we use those to improve our courses, our programs, our certifications, um, and we have different toolkits. So um, what we're going to be presenting on, or what I'm presenting on, is a lot of the material that we've gathered from all of these meetings, and we've put into this toolkit. And then we use that together with research, and we've done a lot of research in this space, and I'll be covering that. And then we have a lot of experts. So our faculty have hundreds of years of combined experience in rescue missions. And we talk with a lot of program directors, subject matter experts, and guest speakers. And more recently, we've been using AI tools. Um, so, with that, we've met with hundreds of missions to learn about their aftercare models. And particularly out of the 600 meetings we have, about 400 to 500 of those are with rescue missions per year. And we've taken notes on the best practices of hundreds of missions. And in addition, we've developed a research project of aftercare models of all Citygate members, and it's based on publicly available data analyzed with the use of AI. And we've assembled all that into a toolkit. So we have this toolkit, and if you go to bit.ly CVU programs, then you can get access to that toolkit. And so this is a part of our program and counseling and case management toolkit. And then there's an aftercare section. And then there's also a section for Hope Gospel Mission. Um, so I can show you real quick what that looks like. So the toolkit is actually just a Google Drive folder. And if you go into here, you can click into the aftercare program, then you can see different material. So we have the slides from this presentation, we have the research report, and then we have a lot of material that Chris has provided from Hope Gospel Mission. Um, and you can look at this research report where we've collected research from a lot of different program models that are out there. So here's what we found in research on types of aftercare services. So there's a difference in the level of intensity and requirement. So there's high intensity and structure engagement. And what I describe this as is this is essentially some missions, and usually these are highly resource missions, they essentially have a 2-year program. So it's year two of the program. I think the sweet spot for most missions is going to be looking at how do you get to this moderate intensity where you have regular check-ins and support, and you have required involvement with financial or housing incentives. And that's what Chris is doing at Hope Gospel Mission. And then there's low intensity, in resources and maybe have an alumni network. And that's where most missions are. And then you have a range of different services. So aftercare and alumni services, you might have alumni meetings and community meetings offered to alumni, relief services, food pantry, clothing, groups for recovery and discipleship. But I think really the thing for a lot of ministries to look at is how do you start to move to a light case management model? You obviously can't afford to do as intensive case management or counseling as you would during the regular program, but a lighter case management really is where I think is a best practice. And then, some programs will have transitional living and sober living housing provided by the mission. Sometimes it's provided by partners. Sometimes there's short duration, sometimes longer duration. And then some missions will have internships, apprenticeships, and vocational training that's tightly integrated at this stage. Sometimes internships at the mission, sometimes employment partners. and then some will have vocational training and trades with employment partners. And then here's the other thing that I would consider, best practice. So I'm trying to put in bold the best practices. The number one problem with aftercare is it's just not funded. So you go from the average mission might spend between twenty and $40,000 per person while they're in the program, and then my estimate is most missions spend probably less than $500 per person. So it's like you fall off this funding cliff. And the reality is, it's not like someone magically is, that stable once they graduate. They need more support. So, having a more tapered approach where you go and, still provide some resources, for year two and year three. And I think that's also what a best practice that Chris is doing. And the reality is that takes staffing. It has to be staff led. There's some models out there where it's peer driven using alumni volunteers, and if that's all you can afford, then go with that. But I think these are kind of the best practices. So if you look at some of the key factors in reducing relapse rates, one of our partners, probably the largest residential recovery ministry study, and involves several thousand people across many sites. And they measure success rates or recovery programs that remain sober 1 year after graduation. And then they looked at them across multiple years. And just to kind of jump to the punchline, what are the factors that reduce, relapse? And basically, what they found is if you have three factors in place, you have a good job, stable housing, and that means not that you're living at a flop house, but you actually have good housing, and a supportive church and recovery community. If you have those three things in place, their success rate was 80%. So that meant less than 20% relapse. Now, if all three were not in place, then their success rate, and this is actually none of these three are in place, the success rate was 10%. So that's kind of the quick overview. Now, with that, some things that you can think about if you're using with your staff, is reflecting on the challenges of your aftercare programs. Now, with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chris, and he's going to share more about his program. So, Chris, maybe you could just introduce yourself real quick, and then jump into the program.
Certainly, thank you. So I'm Chris Headland. I'm the program director at Hope Gospel Mission in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and I've been with Hope Gospel Mission for about 22 years. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about our aftercare program for after our clients complete our programming. So relapse rates over time show that the longer a person is in a healthy environment, the longer they're in a recovery program, the better. Um, After a couple years of sobriety, relapse rates start to go below 50%, and they continue to go down until they plateau at about 5 years. But we obviously can't have programs that are 5 years long because people don't want to stay that long. And we also have to avoid institutionalizing people. So how can we ramp down from our program and take advantage of the things that Andrew's talked about, including staying connected with that healthy support network for a longer period of time? And so on this slide, it talks about some statistics. Increased abstinence rates. A 2022 study revealed that 71% of individuals who engaged in aftercare programs remained sober for at least 1 year, compared to only 41% of those who did not participate in aftercare. And research indicates that aftercare programs significantly improve the chances of long-term recovery for individuals who have completed rehabilitation programs. By bridging the gap between structured treatment and real-world challenges, aftercare helps individuals maintain their sobriety and navigate daily life without resorting to substances. And studies have shown that participation in aftercare programs is associated with a decreased risk of relapse. By providing ongoing support and resources, aftercare helps individuals address triggers and stressors that may lead to substance abuse. So even though you look at different places and see different statistics, one thing is always consistent. Even though the numbers might not match exactly, they consistently show that longer support and aftercare always show higher recovery rates and lower relapse rates. So when you're in a structured space, when all of your residents have their decisions made for them, all of your clients have decisions made for them, there's structure, there's a schedule, everything's so organized, and suddenly that person is alone and isolated. There's stressors that can be created and situations that favor relapse. And so ramping down over time and staying connected to healthy support networks helps ease through that transition. Something we see when we help people move out of homelessness is an increase in that isolation and loneliness. When people have completed Hope Gospel Missions program and they come back because they did relapse, 100% of them report that one of the first things that happened as part of their relapse, when they explore their relapse and try to piece things together, the pattern they see is that they disconnected from their healthy support networks, including their church. And many of them, most of them, report loneliness and isolation as a factor in that relapse. They were around several of their closest friends. They lived with their closest friends for maybe a year and a half as they went through the structured program. And now they're gone and they're by themselves and they're lonely and they're stressed and they're bored and they're overwhelmed. And then suddenly a relapse happens. So one of the things we try to do to prepare them for aftercare while they're still in our program is before they complete, we try to create 7 networks, 7 healthy support networks for each of our residents, including healthy people that will intentionally engage with them. We want healthy people that will be aggressive and assertive to reach out with a sense of urgency if there's a disconnection so that the person can't just easily drift away from that support network and not be noticed. We know that some things to do that are the key components of an effective aftercare program include continued therapy, ongoing individual or group counseling sessions to address underlying issues and develop coping strategies, support systems, participation in support groups, whatever those support groups are, and staying connected to the healthy support network, a sober living environment, whether it's a transitional housing that offers substance-free living space or whatever that looks like, promoting accountability and stability, relapse prevention planning, development of strategies to identify and manage triggers, cravings, and high-risk situations, and then life skills training, programs that teach skills necessary for independent living, including financial management, employment readiness, and stress management. And so at Hope Gospel Mission, taking all this into consideration, understanding what we do about what they need to be successful, we put together an aftercare program that has 3 different levels. We know that the most important thing in all 3 levels is to have intentional, healthy relationships. So when all of our residents leave, we try to maintain some sort of a post-program connection. I'm going to explain each of these 3 levels in a little more detail on the next slides, but we try to maintain some sort of a post-program connection by using rewards as an incentive and trying to stay connected with visits. For those that are willing, we have an alumni group where those clients that have completed our program can maintain relationships and still have peer support in addition to the post-program connection. These build on each other. And finally, best case scenario, the client who completes our long-term program will go into our transitions program where they stay on site. They live in a space that we have on site. They have that continued accountability and we do some continued programming with them. Even though at that point they're all working outside of our mission, out of our ministry, they could live on their own if they wanted to, but they're kind of separating from us, but they're ramping down slowly. We do have some continued programming where we'll make some sort of a small treatment plan for them to keep them connected. Moving on to the next slide, talking about level 1, that post-program connection. This is what we offer to every resident who completes. We give them a $3,000 cash reward for completing our long-term program. And we pay that over 12 months. And we pay that over 12 months for different reasons. One reason is because giving someone who just completed an addiction recovery program $3,000 in cash could be dangerous. That could be a trigger for that person, and we don't want to put them in that position. But another reason we give it out over 12 months is by giving them $250 a month for 12 months, it gives us a reason to stay connected with that person. Ideally, we can give that person that $250 in their own space. our chaplain and that person's counselor try to meet with that person at least once a month. And that $250 is a reason to get together. If we can get into their space to give them that, we can look for any issues that might be happening. We can maybe get on top of problems faster if we notice something. For example, we know that smoking is a good indicator that somebody has started their relapse pattern. And research shows that if somebody quits smoking, if they start smoking again, they're 53% more likely to return to their other addictions. So if we're in their home to give them the $250 and we notice an ashtray or something like that, it gives us a heads up that there's something to be concerned about and we have time to intervene maybe before it's too late. Another thing is we can see their living space. We can kind of get a feel for their healthy life rhythms and whether or not they're still employed and those sorts of things. So if we see a problem, we can address that faster. Another reason for spreading it out over the 12 months is we keep statistics as well, like Andrew was just speaking about, how many people are still safe, stable, and sober a year after they complete our program. And this gives us a reason to stay connected with them and still have contact with them 12 months later so that our statistics are more accurate in that area. Another thing that's included in the level one is that um, we can, I kind of talked about this, several of these points already, but I didn't mention the tools. Um, Being able to remind them of their tools, help them use the tools that they learned for staying sober. We can encourage them. We can make sure they're still connected to their support networks. Everyone who completes is automatically eligible for that $3,000. The only thing they've got to do to maintain eligibility is they've got to maintain that healthy living, right? They've got to stay employed and stay connected with us and those sorts of things. Very minimal, low bar. Our goal is to at least allow them to stay connected with us. If that's all they want, and the incentive is at $250 a month. Going on to level two, then, some people will choose to join our alumni group. All graduating residents are encouraged to participate in this level, and they're invited to be part of our alumni group. Um, After spending a year or more in a structured, healthy recovery environment, immediate independence can be overwhelming and lonely, and so the alumni group provides a peer group that has something significant in common. They've all completed our Renewed Hope program. And our chaplaincy encourages connection, and they'll do what they can to host events and meals to keep people connected. We have a Celebrate Recovery group that meets once a week in the evening. We invite our alumni back for that as well. When we have recreational events, whether it's going to a baseball game or a water park or having a karaoke or trivia night or something like that, we invite the alumni to come back and participate in that. At the end of each month, we have a celebration dinner where we celebrate all the great things the residents have accomplished that month. We invite our alumni back for that. And we want to keep them connected as much as they're able because they make great role models. And also, it helps them in their recovery to stay connected like that. Not everyone chooses the alumni group, but it is available to everyone who completes the Renewed Hope program as an option. And then the third level is the most intense level. That's our discipleship transitions program. And this is the most comprehensive aftercare we have. Those clients still live with us on site. We have a separate wing in our buildings where they have a private bedroom with a private bathroom and shower, but we still have common living areas in those transitional units because we still want them to come out and be part of a community. We don't want them to isolate in their rooms with a microwave and mini fridge and TV and start isolating. So we do invite them to come out and have all 3 meals a day with us. Some do that, some don't. Some like to cook their own stuff. Sometimes their work schedule interferes, but we want them to stay connected as much as possible there. They still meet with their counselor and chaplain on a regular basis. They make a new renewal plan, which is a treatment plan, where they have new goals to reach and accomplish. They are still at this point, and the alumni are invited to join the Celebrate Recovery on Thursday nights, and we encourage them to continue going to their church. But if they stay in the transitions program and live with us on site, those two things are still expected of them. And they're expected to also still be participating in a small group through their church. And that's because we're trying to maintain and continue to develop those 7 support networks we helped with them create while they were with us. In the transitions program, we do collect $600 a month in program fees. This includes all the housing related expenses, their utilities, the internet, the food that they eat, all that's included in that $600 a month. They just have their personal expenses on top of that. And to our transitions program doesn't have a length of stay. They can stay in there for a couple months or a couple years as long as it's healthy for them and they're not getting institutionalized. But one of the things we do to incentivize staying longer, because we know that the longer you're in a healthy environment, the healthier you'll become, is that if they do stay in that transitions program for 12 months, we give them 50% of the fees back. And so if they're paying $600 a month, that nets them $3,600 back at the end of that year. So if they stay with us and complete our program, they get 3,000. If they finish this program, they get 3,600 back. And because they're only paying 600 a month in the first place, and that covers all of their expenses, most of them are able to use the rest of the money to either pay off debt or save up some money or go to school or something like that. And we've had residents that have completed our program and left us into home ownership. So we've had people come to us homeless and leave us as homeowners. And that's maybe not the typical, but it's possible under the way we've structured and set up these programs. And so the least amount of people participate in the transitions program. That's the most comprehensive, but it's also the most successful. But we want to make all 3 levels available so that if people do want to separate from us and not stay that connected, at least there's some level of connection that they have after they leave, so that we're trying to do those things that Andrew talked about, the job, the stable housing, and staying connected to the support networks. So that's kind of what our aftercare program looks like and what the options are for our guests.
Yeah. So, Chris, I had a couple questions on this. So, say
Certainly.
you have, like over several years, say you had 100 graduates. Um, Help me understand like what portion of those are going to go into level one and level three, and then is level two really more like what they go to after they're done with level one or level three? Also, this seems almost like an end destination for everyone, right?
Level one, two,
Um,
and three build on each other. So
yeah.
when they leave our program on the first day after they graduate, they can barely stay connected with us in level one. They can moderately stay connected to us in level two, or they can more
Uh-huh.
comprehensively stay connected to us in level three. Level three would encompass level one, level two, and level three, all the
Yeah.
bullet points I put on all 3 of those slides.
Okay. And so what proportion of your people or what percentage would go with each?
Out of 100 people, I would say 50 of them probably choose level one. 40 of them probably choose level two, and about 10 of them choose level three.
Okay. So if they're doing level two, they're also doing level one.
Correct. They're still
Okay.
getting that $3,000 paid out over
Yeah.
12 months. And yes,
And do you have an alumni group after, say, they're done with level one if they wanted to stay connected?
yeah, we have alumni who have graduated years ago that are still part of our alumni group. As long as they want to stay active and connected, we'd love to have them. They're still welcome to come to our resident events. They're still welcome to attend Celebrate Recovery and such.
Yeah.
I think of one guy who I think he graduated 10 years ago, and he's still around at most of our celebration dinners.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I just want to highlight a couple things. So, as I mentioned, I've met with several hundred rescue missions, and Hope Gospel Missions program model, I think, has the best combination of best practices. I think this having some sort of incentive to keep them engaged and having, regular case management, the once a month, case management visit at the person's house, that is, great. And I think that that's something that I wish more missions would do. I think the other thing that is also really a best practice a lot of missions don't want to do this, intensive, we're going to provide housing and, all these things. And I think the reason is because it's costly. But the fact that you're charging, a fee for that, I think is part of how you have to, you don't want 100 people in that, right? Because you don't have room for 100 people. So charging the fee, I think that, the fact that you're, give back part of it is also really smart. So I think that's a, really good example. So I think that Chris, you've designed a lot of elements that other missions can copy. And, one thing I also want to say before I go into this next session is, why are we doing a workshop on aftercare? Um, as I mentioned, we talk with all these missions, and if I had to say what is the number one intervention that I would recommend more than anything else that's going to improve outcomes of all missions, everything they do, by far the number one thing is aftercare. Honestly, I think that may be more if missions would just fix that, that may be better than fixing just about everything else because aftercare is really where things get dropped in terms of just total life change and their outcomes in terms of long term. I think that that's probably the biggest point of influence. So that's why we're focused on that. That's why I wanted to do this workshop. That's why we've developed this after Wounded Healers Aftercare program model. I want to talk a little bit about why we've invested so much in aftercare and what we're trying to do. So we have three tiers in terms of City Vision's 5-year outcomes vision. So in aftercare, we want to serve about 10% of program graduates of our partners. So we have over 100 rescue mission partners, and we want to, for those partners, about 10% of their graduates, we want to connect them with our Wounded Healers Aftercare program model. It's not a solution for everyone, but for a lot of ministries, it is. And then for the overall programs for staff and organizations, we want to enable our partners to more than double their total staff training hours. So say your mission is spending 2,000 people hours in training your staff. We want to make it 4,000 by enabling you to outsource to us to do that. And we've had some partners like St. Matthew's House, it increased fourfold. Um, and then in terms of a movement, and this is where we're investing in our doctoral program, we want to serve as a major source for thought leaders and innovation to enable the movement to continue to grow and thrive. Now, what is our Wounded Healers Aftercare program? So what it is it's an aftercare program model. So we've worked with 62 ministry partners. Last year, we had 162 students in this. And the way it works is people will go through a partner residential recovery program, and then we become a part of the support network. So, Chris, you talked about having seven different communities that you want them to be a part of. We could be a part of one of those communities, and so it's both a community and an educational opportunity and continued life skills. And we've had pretty good outcomes. So our graduation rate for this has been 54%, and employment rate has been 94%. About half the students who participate in this are actually working at the missions. You can see the list of the missions that have partnered with us on this and the number of wounded healers that they've had. And part of the reason why a lot of missions partner with us on this is that with the City Vision Scholarship and the Pell Grant, it covers tuition in this year, and this may change from year to year, but for the 25, 26 academic year for partners sending two or more students, we'll provide a scholarship. So the student is, with the scholarship and Pell Grant, they're actually going to get paid $324 per course that they take. And typically more than 95% of our Wounded Healers students, and that's basically anyone who's a graduate from a program, would participate. And whenever we partner, we're partnering with graduates. So this would be people who go into those one, two, or three phase, and we could work with them. Now, what is the Wounded Healers program? It's basically three things. So we're providing remote case management, and in many cases, we'll work with a partner, and we can keep track of how they're doing. So if they relapse, we'll know. And then we combine that with their certificate, and we have let's see, is it 10 certificates or 9 certificates now? And most of our certificates are two components. We have 3 hard skills courses related to the certificate, but then we have 3 soft skills courses. Now we do have one certificate that's focused on six soft skills courses. For people who say they want to do a trade, but they want to continue to work on their soft skills, then they could, go through that certificate program. And what the biggest part, and honestly, this is the biggest benefit of the program, is our Wounded Healers Life Skills courses. So most missions have life skills, but what we're doing is just going a lot deeper. So if you've taught, say, managing your personal finances, and say you spend 10 or 20 hours on that, a three-credit college credit course is 135 hours. And most of these things are, we're going to continue to build on the disciplines they need. It isn't like, they learned the principle. They need to continue to apply this as a discipline, and we're going to walk alongside them. So these different courses are project based, and each course, they have a goal. So our vocation, calling, purpose of work, you're developing a life plan, because a lot of students who go to school, they don't know why they're there. They need to have a better reason for why they're at school, and they develop that. But then they also, develop an overall life plan. And then the Wounded Healers course is focusing on a recovery and relapse prevention plan, and then taking care of your personal finances, taking care of your health, how to have healthy relationships, avoiding behavioral addictions, and dealing with past family issues. And this all ties into what we call our Wounded Healers course, and it's also our Wounded Healers recovery model. So the idea is you want to have a holistic plan to expand your capacity for recoveries. In counseling circles, clinical counseling circles, they call this recovery capital. So you're trying to expand your ability to remain sober. And so what this course does is, as you go through the course, you'll cover these seven different domains. So processing past trauma and family issues. And really what we're saying is we're training you in what are the habits you need to have. You need to be taking proactive steps towards recovery. You need to have support groups and counseling, just like Chris recommended. So what we're doing is we're reinforcing the same things. And the problem that Chris said, it's because people forget these a year or two in. And if they go for a certificate and associates, a bachelor's, they might be with City Vision for several years, and we're reinforcing these same concepts. So in week three, it's managing thoughts and core beliefs. So using concepts like Christian cognitive behavioral therapy, and helping to train them in having healthy core beliefs and Christian worldview, and then managing emotions, skills around dialectical behavioral therapy, emotional intelligence and ministry and management, where we work on things like anger management. Because what we found is the number one reason why people often lose their jobs after they get a job from a rescue mission. It has to do with not being able to get along with their boss or their supervisor, or going off. So, being able to handle that. And then healthy relationships and support networks. So seeking healthy relationships, attending church and small group, and then taking care of your physical health, and being able to have good boundaries and self-care, avoiding behavioral addictions, and then a lot of things related to job, financial health, and career marketability. And the idea is that a lot of these, we have follow-up courses where they can go a lot deeper. So, whether it's on managing their emotions, or, their personal health. So this course serves as a survey course into a lot of our other life skills. And all of these are tied into a Christian worldview. We have Christian components throughout. And the idea behind this is, you know, what happens is a lot of people sabotage themselves because they are giving out too much, and they lose their recovery capital, and that they need to be working on building up their overall capital. So, what's the profile of a typical wounded healer student? It's not a solution for everyone. We said we want to serve 10% on average with our partners. So typically, we're only going to be a good fit for 5 to 20% of program graduates. Often, they need to still be connected with a ministry, either formally or informally. They have to have a high school diploma, GED, or equivalent. That's an accreditation requirement. Probably the biggest challenge is they have to have the capacity to spend 17 hours a week on a course. We can take students at all levels academically if they're willing to put in the time. But ultimately, they have to have that time. And for some people, 17 hours a week would keep them out of trouble. It's the idle hands or the devil's workshop. But then for other people, if they work 17 hours a week, that's going to stress them out, and it might actually lead them to relapse. So, you have to assess how this fits. And so about half of our students are employed at ministry partners, and the other half are working in outside jobs. but almost all of them are employed full time. So how we can help support different programs is we can be a part of your wraparound aftercare support strategy for program graduates to improve the long-term success rates, reduce relapse rates, improve employment outcomes. We can share outcomes data. Often if someone gets a bachelor's with us and they're part-time, they'll be working with us for 5 to 8 years, and we can give you feedback on how that student's doing. We can help provide training on best practices, and then we can recognize credit for your client educational program. We can write letters of support as an aftercare partner for any funding proposals you submit. And sometimes that's helpful, because they know that you're partnered with the university. Now, on the credit, so the way that works is um, we can provide credit for all sorts of things. So it could be culinary training and work experience, 3 to 12 hours, structured recovery and life skills modules, 3 to 6 credits, addiction counseling certification, different client curriculum. We could review this, trade certifications, things like forklift certification. And then there's certain things that are pre-approved for credit. So if someone has recovery peer support certification, 3 credits, we have a lot of partners that are there that if they go through that, then they can get credit for that. And this is a part of a bigger strategy that City Vision has, what we call our ministry OS. And that's where most of our skills are focused. I mean, most of our courses are focused on, kind of the how of ministry, skills and competencies, the nuts and bolts. But our ministry OS, the idea is, how do you think about the why or the values, the heart of the organization? So with our courses, we have a course on the strategic plan, but this is really about, okay, is your strategic plan aligning with your theology and values? Do you have a lot of organizational practices built in to ensure that your staff are aligned with your values and that you're training them in that? Then we have this course, Christian Approaches to Counseling and Life Transformation. The whole goal of that course is to build a program values training manual. This other course, you're going to be building something that's called a values alignment plan. And then all of our other courses integrate with these is the idea. So if you're interested in more information, then I would encourage you to send an email to partnerships@cityvision.edu, or you can go to our website. Our Wounded Healers program, often we're presenting as a guest speaker on this program model to your clients. And then if you're interested in learning more about Hope Gospel Missions programs, Chris's book, More Than a Homeless Shelter, is, in my opinion, probably the best book for people who are wanting to learn about Christian rescue mission program models. Provides a really good overview of a lot of different best practices, and you can email Chris um, at this email address, chris@hopegospelmission.org. So hopefully this has been helpful, and we look forward to connecting more with you.